Hello and welcome back to my channel. Today we are going to be talking about how you can do a gaining phase and how you can execute a bulking phase properly. So often I see girls either just not do gaining phases because they're fucking petrified of gaining weight, or doing it in a very bad way where you just eat everything under the sun in attempts to build a lot of muscle, but it's just not how it works. And I have been in both end of those camps. I've not eaten properly. I've done 2-month gaining phases in hope that that would build me some muscle. And I have also done the dirty bulk where I just ate everything and anything in order to build the muscle that I thought I would be able to build. So I'm going to talk you through how to actually do a gaining phase with case studies of myself and my clients, so that you can see gaining phases fucking work when they are done properly. I'm going to run you through how to set it up, what the purpose is, why we do them, and hopefully you will gain a lot of value out of this in terms of understanding how to do that gaining phase, how to execute it now that we are coming up to the winter months, which is where most people undoubtedly want to focus on growth. Obviously in lead up to the summer months, as stereotypical as it is, most people do want to get leaner, want to get that bikini body, they want to feel good in themselves when they're wearing shorts, when they're wearing vest tops, all that good stuff. Now as we leave the summer, and I mean we didn't really have a summer in the UK, but like as it gets a little bit colder and you may find yourself like opting for warmer clothes, it does seem like the better time to focus on gaining and to focus on intentionally building that muscle. Particularly if you've done a fat loss phase and you are now in a leaner point, you don't really know what you're doing, this is what you're gonna do. So let's kick off with the purpose of a gaining phase. Ultimately, if you want to grow muscle, you are going to need to be in an energy surplus. Now, this goes back with years and years and years and years and years and years and years of research that we will optimally grow muscle when we are in an energy surplus or a caloric surplus. If you are a beginner or you are obese or you've taken a long time off training, you are going to be able to build muscle whilst in a calorie deficit. This is purely from the standpoint that when you start out or you don't really have that much experience, particularly with progressive overload and periodized training, you have a huge advantage that this stimulus that we're now applying to the muscle is completely novel. It's complete novelty. So your muscles are now like, oh shit, like we've got some pressure going on there, we've got some stimulus, we're being demanded, so we're gonna have to adapt and grow to facilitate this demand. This is why consistency is so important, because if you are not training on a week by week basis, they're not going to keep getting those signs. So yeah, you can, build muscle when you are in your starting phases, or you're doing a body recomp phase, or you are like obese or just starting out, you've taken a long time off, or maybe you've never really followed a set periodized program either before. So it happens a lot with our clients that come in and they've done like Courtney Black apps, they've done lots of HIIT workouts, they've done all the fucking influencers' apps, then where we go and focus on actual hypertrophic focused training, they are able to build a lot of muscle. But if you have been training properly for 1 or 2 years, or you're quite experienced in the gym, in order to take your training to the next level and in order to see the changes that you want to see, you are probably going to have to enter a gaining phase. Now, the reason again behind this is that once we get to a point where you need to continue to challenge the muscles, we need to be in that energy surplus in order to do so, and in order to actually see the growth and facilitate that growth that you want to see. So in essence, if you are wanting to grow a hefty amount of muscle, or even just a decent amount of muscle, you are going to want to go through a gaining phase at some point. Now, when it comes to gaining phases, the most important thing is setting it up correctly. Again, done the dirty bulks before, I've done the bulking for 3 weeks before, neither of which were effective. And honestly, if you want to look different when it comes to cutting down, so say for example this summer you cut down, you were happy with how you looked, but you thought your glutes, your quads could be a little more fuller, your shoulders could be a little more fuller, so you can continue to create that like hourglass or an X frame, then you are going to need to go through a gaining phase eventually, because again, we can't just continue to lift weights and hope that muscle will build. It has to be very very intentional when it comes to how we structure this. So if you want to look different by next summer, by the time you cut down, you've got to spend some time intentionally building muscle. Otherwise, when you cut down again, you're going to look the exact fucking same as you did last summer. So it's really important that you do spend time in a growth phase if you want to grow your muscle, particularly a muscle like your glutes and your quads, which most of our clients want to do. So let's talk about when you should do a calorie surplus and when you should enter a gaining phase. Now, the starting point to your gaining phase is absolutely crucial, because what you do not want to do is start a gaining phase when you feel uncomfortable. When we are entering a gaining phase, we have to recognize that we're probably going to be there between 3 and 6 months. It's going to be a long period of intentionally gaining weight, intentionally gaining muscle, but also a little bit of body fat is inevitable, because just as we can't spot reduce fat, we can't really spot reduce or spot gain muscle. I mean, actually we can, but we can't spot gain fat when it comes on our body. So what you need to recognize is that it's going to be a long time, and you're going to have to be very, very consistent with it. So if you've got a holiday in September that you want to be lean for, and you're watching this in August going, should I start a gaining phase? You should probably hold off. In addition, you want to make sure that you're starting from a pretty lean point. Now, again, the reason behind this is that you don't want to start a gaining phase and then get 3 months in or even 2 months in and feel super fucking uncomfortable in how you look. So I'm going to add some pictures here as to whereabouts your body fat levels are wanting to be. Now, obviously the lower levels that your body fat are, the probably longer that you're going to feel comfortable in doing that gaining phase, which is of course ideal. In addition to this, it is going to be much better from a hormonal standpoint if you are starting out from a little bit of a leaner space. If you are starting your gaining phase and you're at like 25-30% body fat, the chances are that you're not going to use that food as efficiently. Like of course you're still going to use the food, but your insulin, your sensitivity, how we use that food is very, very different. And especially when it comes to things like your digestion, if you're just piling loads and loads of food down yourself and you're already at a pretty high level of body fat, we're not going to get the best results when it comes to your gaining phase. And when it then comes to cutting phases and stripping it all back, you're going to have so much to lose in order to reveal the muscle that you've built, that it just will be very, very unproductive. So you want to make sure that you are starting your gaining phase from a relatively lean standpoint. You don't have to be shredded, you don't have to be diced, you don't have to be like 5% levels of body fat, but I would recommend that you're somewhere in between 10 and 20, maybe 25% body fat before you enter a gaining phase, probably 10 to 20 to be honest, so that you are starting off from a really, really good point, and that when we're applying, you know, progressive overload, we're seeing the muscle grow, you can actually see the results, you can actually reap the rewards of it as well. There is such a thing when it comes to gaining phases of being over fat, where when you are overfeeding, when you are in a really, really deep surplus and you do that for too long of a period, it becomes really unproductive. Your training doesn't actually get much better. You maybe find that you're not progressive overloading anymore. You're struggling to digest that your food that you're eating. So we want to make sure that we are starting off from a good point to set us up for that long-term success when it comes to your gaining. Unless you're super, super lean already, I would always recommend that you do a maintenance phase at least before you go and enter a gaining phase, because if you've never tracked your macros before, this is probably something that you're going to want to do throughout this gaining phase. And we need to understand where are your protein levels at, where are your calories currently at, because when we're entering a gaining phase, we're actually going to have to increase that. A lot of people think they only need to track during their fat loss phases, during their deficits, but your gaining phase is equally as important, because we need to know how much we put in your body. Are we seeing your body weight go up? Are we seeing things move? Because if you just leave it to chance, you just kind of increase your calories, kind of eat intuitively, kind of do a bit of this, a bit of that, you're never actually going to know. Like we need that data to be able to assess how your body is responding. It's like if you were paid every single month but you weren't to know how much you were paid, you wouldn't know how much you could spend. So it's very, very similar in that if we don't know how many calories you're eating, we don't know ballpark how much you're expending, we don't know where your body weight is at, we need to be able to form patterns through the data, and that is why tracking data collection is so fucking important. So when it comes to setting up your surplus, you are probably going to want to be at maintenance to begin with, assessing that rate of gain. So what I like to do with the more advanced of our clients that are probably entering those gaining phases is they get a spreadsheet with their body weight tracker. So this is essentially where we're assessing how their body weight is responding on a week by week basis. Now for a gaining phase, we are looking about 0.25 to a 0.5% rate of gain per week. So that's obviously very, very small. It's a very small percent of gain. The reason being is that, especially as women, and especially if you are a natural training person, a natural athlete, a natural bodybuilder, or whatever you want to call it, our capacity to put on muscle is a lot less than men, and definitely a lot less than someone who is assisted. And unfortunately, a lot of people that you do see on Instagram don't disclose that they are assisted. So they don't disclose that they are potentially using anabolics or any form of steroid that enhances our ability to build muscle or lose fat. So when you are a natural athlete or a natural female, it is a little bit more difficult for us to pack on the muscle. Now, a lot of people think the more they eat equals the more muscle they gain. That's unfortunately not how it works. We are looking maybe about a pound of muscle growth per month. But again, we can't guarantee this. There's no way of measuring it unless you are in a lab and you are being tested on. So what we're looking for is about a 0.25 to 0.5% rate of gain per week. Whether you measure your body weight in pounds or kilogram, it still applies with this rate of gain. This ensures that we're not gaining at a too quick of a rate, that you're just going to be piling on the body fat, and also not too slow that it's actually just, you may as well be at maintenance, because there's no point in doing like a 50 calorie surplus. Like at that point, it's just a tracking error and you may as well be at maintenance. So we're looking at a 0.25 to 0.5% rate of gain. This may fluctuate, which is why we have the range rather than a set number, because one week, you know, maybe you go out for a meal, you have something slightly saltier, you're going to be more towards that 0.5. Another week, you may find that it's more towards the 0.25 or it's even lower. And all we're doing is looking for those averages across the week, across the month, across the gaining phase in itself, across the macro and the micro cycles, so that we can see exactly where you are at in terms of your gaining. So for most people, this may look like a 200 calorie surplus. It could be a 400 calorie surplus, or it could even be a 500 calorie surplus. It is completely dependent on you as a person, your genetics, your history of dieting, your history of gaining, your training intensity, frequency, your expenditure. It all massively depends. What you probably will find is that as you progress further into your surplus, you won't need as insane jumps in calories. So for example, when I started my gaining phase back in September of 2022, initially my calories were increased quite high quite quickly. So I went from maintaining, I believe, this is just me by the way, please don't take this as like this will be you as well. This is just me being very transparent with my numbers so that you can understand what I mean by the differences here. So when I started my gaining phase, I believe we started at maintenance, which was 2003 or 2400. That quickly went up to 2900 within maybe a month or two period, because my body weight just was not increasing. Now from that point onwards, as soon as my body weight was increasing on a very consistent basis, we were seeing a 0.25 to a 0.5% rate of gain per week. We stayed there. The goal is not to continue to build your calories up until you feel sick to the touch of food, but until we are in that optimal rate of gain. So when I got to that 2,900 calories, I believe it was, we stayed there for literally about 6 months. I did get very fed up of food, I'm going to be honest, and gaining phases can be very uncomfortable, which I'm going to cover in a second. But that was the general gist of my calories, is that it did have to increase quite quickly to get me up to that rate of gain, and then we stayed there. The reason that it kind of increased very quickly is I had done a long dieting phase prior to that and a long phase at maintenance. Now essentially when your body is pretty dieted, you can use food very efficiently, which is why things like refeeds and high carb days when you're dieting are so effective. So having that quick surplus of food, having that quick like burst of energy was very effective for my body. I could use that glycogen straight away in the gym especially, so that's why it increased super quick. But again, every gaining phase will be different. Like the next one I do may be very different. My calories may be lower, they may be higher. There's no knowing until we get there, and that's why we're using this data to be able to understand how my body responds. So overall kind of consensus is that when you are starting your gaining phase, make sure that you are starting from a relatively lean point. You've done at least a few weeks at maintenance, tracking your calories, understanding your body weight's response, understanding your rate of gain, understanding macros, protein intake, everything like that, and training intensity is a massive one. And then gradually increase your calories so that you are between a 0.25 and a 0.5% rate of gain. The only time that we are probably looking to be around about maintenance calories is during your deloads. Not every coach will suggest this, but I do personally prefer to do this during deload weeks, which, you know, could be every 8 weeks, could be every 10 weeks, just depending on the client. Then we'll do a maintenance week, so a week at maintenance calories, purely because A, we're not using those calories, we don't need them if we're not training, we don't need to be in a surplus for the sake of it, and B, it gives you a break from constantly stuffing your face. So next up, let's talk about the expectations and the realities of a gaining phase, because when you are constantly dieting, or when you have been in a dieting phase for a long time, or maybe even at maintenance for a long time, and you've just kind of been spinning your wheels, not seeing a huge amount of progress with either fat loss or muscle growth, going into a gaining phase seems insanely fun, but I can promise you now, the novelty wears off. And I want to be super honest with this, because I really actually enjoy gaining phases. I love, you know, eating more. It's fun. I love the energy that I feel when I'm in a gaining phase. But there are a few reality checks that I think you guys should be made aware of. Now, the first one is how uncomfortable it gets. 1 month of gaining is fun. Month 2 of gaining is fun. When you're eating more, you're seeing yourself get stronger, your glutes are rounding out. When you get to month 6, month 7, that's where it starts to become quite challenging. I'll insert some photos up here around about this area so you can see my face, because I gain weight on my face like as one of my primary places. My legs and my face are my first to gain weight. So you can see here how my face looked during my gaining phase. I look quite puffy, I look quite uncomfortable, and that's because I was shoveling down almost 3,000 calories a day, doing bare minimum steps, to be honest. I think I did about 8,000 per day, no cardio was programmed, and 4 sessions a week. And it's fair to say I was very full and very uncomfortable. It gets to the point where you do start to feel quite heavy, you do start to feel a little bit chunky, honestly. You know, the clothes don't necessarily fit you anymore, particularly when you have been dieting, you've been quite lean. You know, I've got abs right now, I've got visible abs during my photo shoot prep. So then going to a point where that is non-existent, and obviously like you're in a bigger body, right? And that is completely okay. You don't have to go super hard on it, you don't have to go to crazy extents, but this is even just a moderate surplus. I did a 0.25 to a 0.5% rate of gain for the entire duration. I believe I gained 7 kilograms throughout my entire gaining phase, because I started at 59 and ended at 66. So yeah, 7 kilograms I gained over that 7-month period. So, you know, I didn't gain an insane amount of weight, but I felt really, by the end, I felt really uncomfortable. I was struggling with my digestion. I wasn't digesting food very well. And when we're not digesting food very well, we're not breaking those foods down into usable energy. We're not breaking that down into usable proteins, amino acids. We're not breaking it down into usable glycogen, because it's not being digested properly. Our body's not processing it properly. So you have to be very careful when it comes to a gaining phase with your expectations, and understanding that it may get that difficult and it may get uncomfortable as hell. I'm not saying this to put you off, because I truly think that everybody should at least undergo a gaining phase, you know, at least every year or every few years, because it is absolutely vital if you want to change how your body looks. Again, you know, if you are slightly more beginner or you're slightly more intermediate, you probably don't need a 7-8 month gaining phase. You're probably going to be fine doing a 4-month gaining phase. or even focusing on a 0.25% rate of gain and sticking to the lower end, being in just above maintenance, and sticking to that lower end of the spectrum if you don't want to gain too much weight. There are many super reputable coaches that do prefer to keep on a lower body fat side of ends, you know, that they prefer to stay a little bit leaner year round, and that is completely okay as well. But you do have to accept the fact that eventually you are going to have to do a gaining phase, and no matter how your body fat levels are, you're probably going to feel a bit uncomfortable, you know, you're probably going to have to fit the food in. As a 5'2" woman, 3,000 calories is a lot of food to put down your body, and that meant I was constantly eating and constantly thinking, when am I going to get my next calories in? I now eat, at the moment during my photo shoot prep, I'm on 1,500 calories, and this is an absolute fucking breeze because I'm still thinking back to the point when I was having to force feed myself in that gaining phase, and that reminds me, I'm like, okay, this is easy. Like, I'm gonna have to force feed myself, and I'm finding this a lot easier. But yeah, gaining phases can be quite challenging mentally and physically, of course. Like, mentally more than anything, it is just a mental game. So you have to remember that when you are entering a gaining phase, because the last thing that we want to do is do a very, very, very short gaining phase because you get uncomfortable too quickly. And that's why tracking the data and sticking to that 0.25 to 0.5% rate of gain, that's why tracking the data is so important, so that you can actually kind of assess whereabouts you're at and make sure that we're not gaining at too quick of a rate. So the most important thing when it comes to your gaining phase, more important than the calories, more important than your protein, more important than your fats, your carbs, is actually how you use those calories. Because I see a lot of girls enter a gaining phase not really knowing what they're doing. They just end up getting fat, unfortunately. They end up getting fat and they don't actually grow much muscle. And that is purely because they don't have the fundamentals in place in order to grow that muscle. If you don't know how to train at a high intensity, you're not really confident with training progressions, you're not really confident with periodization, you're not that confident with, you know, tempo, intent, mind to muscle, then I would highly recommend that you get a coach ASAP before you enter that gaining phase, and you spend time at maintenance before you go into a gaining phase. If you are rushing into a muscle building phase, a bulk, right, and you don't know how to train to 0 RIR, you don't know how to train with full intent, you don't know how to stimulate your muscles, you don't know when to use the exercises that give you the best stimulus to fatigue ratio, if you don't know how to do those things, you're probably going to be able to grow muscle at maintenance first. Like, if you don't know what you're doing with those elements, you can grow a shit ton of muscle at maintenance calories once we've got those elements nailed, okay? You don't have to start shoveling a load of calories for the sake of it, because until those things are nailed, until we are training close to failure, until we are bringing intent, until we are bringing a slow tempo, controlling your eccentrics, and really, really stimulating the muscles in question, then there's no point in you going into a gaining phase, because you have so much capability, you have so much opportunity to do that at a lower calorie set point before you enter that surplus. We only want to use the surplus if we fucking need it. So if you don't have those things in place, do that at maintenance first. That is a huge, huge, huge thing, is that girls just not training at a high enough intensity, not training close enough to failure. They don't really know where their volume landmarks are. They don't know, should I be doing 4 sets? Should I be doing 3 sets? Should I be doing drop sets? If we don't know this, then please, please, please hire a reputable coach. Your gal, we have slots available for our coaching if you are interested, or honestly, like, go and educate yourself and spend some time at maintenance first, because you don't need to go into a surplus at this point. If you're listening thinking, I don't even know what those words means, please message me, please reach out, because we can help you transform your body in fucking a matter of months, right? And learn exactly what you're doing so that you have that confidence and that ability to execute it on your own. But what I'm saying is, you can do a lot at maintenance if we don't have those things in play. We want to be training hard. We want to actually be using the calories that you are putting into your body. We are not just doing this bulking phase to get bulky. We're doing it to build a hell of a lot of muscle so that the next time you cut down, you are leaner. So setting targets is insanely important here with regards to your strength, setting goals for your strength, having more of a performance-based goal approach, you know, especially when you're cutting, you are seeing progress, you're seeing yourself get leaner every single week, you're seeing the weight and the scales go down. When you move into a gaining phase, you don't have that kind of metric to track, you don't have that progression to go off. So we need something to quantify your progress, because ultimately, you know, you're not going to look at your glutes and they're going to get fatter. You're going to see your waist get a bit bigger, you're going to see your glutes get a bit bigger, everything's going to get a bit bigger because you're getting a bit bigger because you're eating more food. So setting strength goals is a brilliant way here in order to see how you are progressing along the way. So to conclude the video, if you are wanting to grow a huge amount of muscle, or you are wanting to look different when it comes to your next cutting phase, these are the things that you need to take into consideration. One, you need to be at a low enough level of body fat that you're going to be comfortable in maintaining a surplus for the next 3 to 6 months. Two, you need to commit to a surplus for the next 3 to 6 months at a 0.25 to a 0.5% rate of gain, ensuring that you are tracking the data. Three, you need to make sure that your training is on point. We are training close to failure with intent. We are training at a high intensity, and you will understand the periodization of your workouts in order to continually progress and progressively overload to challenge the muscles and use the extra calories. Four, you understand that you are going to have to get quite uncomfortable. You know, you're going to gain a bit of weight, you're going to gain some body fat, and that is an inevitable part of the process. Hopefully this has been helpful for you in terms of understanding how to actually execute a gaining phase properly. If you do have any questions on gaining phases, bulking in general, you can leave it in the comments and I will get back to you, or you can DM me on Instagram. My handle is @EVTeamEDC and I will get back to you. And also, if you are interested in being coached by myself or my team, you can apply for coaching through the link in the description. Again, we will take you through that gaining phase and teach you how to do it in the correct manner, how to gain a correct rate, how to ensure that we're gaining the appropriate amount of muscle, and also ensuring that when you do have some minor panics over your body weight and over seeing those scales go up, that you have that reassurance that we are doing the right thing. Please like and subscribe if you found this helpful. Share it with your friends. It helps me help more women across the world transform their bodies, minds and lives. And I hope you have a brilliant rest of your day. Bye.